Ghost-type Pokemon present a lot of problems to anyone trying to study the science of the Pokemon world. Can one even explain the supernatural with scientific means? But I'm sure you're gonna try. In honor of Halloween, I decided to take a crack at explaining ghost-type Pokemon in a way that doesn't involve actual ghosts. I often describe myself as a man of science, and there's no scientific evidence whatsoever of things like ghosts, spirits, poltergeists, phantoms, specters, whatever, existing in the real world. Now I just want to get this out of the way as early as I can. I understand that the Pokemon world and our world are very different. In the Pokemon world, there could very well be dead things, either people or Pokemon, that come back to life in the form of ghost-type Pokemon, but I'm going to be talking about if I were to see a ghost-type Pokemon, how would I explain some of the spooky things that they do? First, let's take some ghosts out of the equation. Not all ghost types are reported to be actual ghosts, just like how quite a lot of steel types aren't actually made out of metal. Some, like Jellicent and Giratina, Drifblim, Chandelure, and Sableye, all have spooky powers and usually feed off of the negative feelings of others, but are not really claimed to be actual ghosts. Others that are claimed to be actual ghosts have lore that just makes no sense, even in a world where ghosts do exist. A good example of this is Banette. Now, Banette's lore says that it was once a plush doll that was thrown away by its owner, and it was possessed by an evil spirit. And this spirit searches, hunts for this child that threw it away so that Banette can exact its revenge. However, this doesn't make sense, because it evolves from Shuppet. If Banette were either the first Pokemon in an evolutionary line, or just a single-stage Pokemon, I could see that. I could buy that, but because it evolves from Shuppet, a Pokemon that is not claimed in any of its Pokedex entries to be an actual ghost, something dead come back to life, I just don't really buy it. Also, its Ultra Moon Pokedex entry mentions that if you care about Banette enough, and if it's shown so much love from a trainer, it will turn back into the doll that it once was. But, once again, I don't buy that either, because I'm positive that if you max out Banette's happiness, or its friendship in, like the Pokemon and Me, its affection in Pokemon and Me, or something to that effect, nothing would happen. I'm positive that's true. So, that just kind of undercuts a lot of Pokedex entries personally, but for argument's sake for this video, a lot of ghost types. So with that out of the way, let's sort of try to explain some of the spooky abilities that ghost types generally have. And after writing this script all together, I decided to put a TLDR version in here just to sort of, so it makes sense along the way. And it basically explains everything. Ghost types, in my opinion, are just incredibly powerful psychic type Pokemon. When you think about it that way, it actually makes a lot of sense. So let's break it down. Many ghost types get their energy, their food, from the bad feelings, the fear and jealousy and malice of others, whether it's people or Pokemon. The Gardevoir line, who are very powerful psychics, can sense the emotions of the people and Pokemon around them, so it wouldn't be too much of a stretch, in the Pokemon world anyway, for ghost types to, say, take Dream Eater, a psychic type move, and somehow use that to feed off of other emotions as well. Ralta's Pokedex entry from Pokemon Platinum also kind of just confirms this proof of concept, and I quote, "If the horns on its head capture the warm feeling of people or Pokemon, its body warms up slightly," essentially saying that it can take the emotions of the people around it and turn it into heat, or energy. Next, we have invisibility, the classic, quintessential ghost trait. That's explained by them being extremely powerful psychics too, in a couple ways. We've already seen that at least 2 psychic-type Pokemon can turn themselves invisible, which are Latios and Latias, from arguably the worst Pokemon movie, Pokemon Heroes, Latios and Latias. It's not total invisibility, as throughout the movie, when they turn invisible, several Pokemon and even some trainers as well can see Lydos or Latias when they're flying around. But it's at least good enough that Ash couldn't see them at the beginning of the movie when they were literally right in front of his face. I mean, it is Ash, so there's that. That kind of undercuts my point a little bit, but I think it still stands. In fact, the Pokedex entry from Diamond and Pearl for Latias says that it can use the down coating on its body to refract light and make itself look invisible. So that's canon in the anime and in the games. However, no Ghost-type Pokemon really have any sort of down on them, so that's just sort of a proof of concept. There are a number of ways that I think that they could turn themselves invisible using extremely powerful psychic powers. The first being that they just use really, really high-powered telepathy to just make it so the target doesn't see them. Sort of like if you've seen, which X-Men movie is it? I think X-Men First Class, where they're like invading some building and Dr. X has some people in like the back of a truck and some people like come open up the back of the truck to look for, contraband or whatever, and you just see Dr. X in there doing his thing, and clearly him and all the soldiers are there, but the people examining the truck don't see them. They just see an empty truck. So similar to that. Another method would be through something similar to what are called retroreflective panels, which are a really neat piece of technology, most commonly used in stealth aircraft. Essentially, the plane has cameras all over it that project whatever they're looking at onto a panel on the opposite side of the aircraft. So for example, if I had a camera on my chest facing toward this camera, there'd be a panel on my back showing exactly what this sees. So it'd be like if you were behind me looking forward, you would see what this camera sees, which ideally would make me invisible. It's possible that ghost types use some kind of almost like illusion magic in Skyrim to do that kind of thing, but I think just the more standard telepathy is much more likely. As for intangibility, going through walls and stuff, I think that's pretty easily explained too. Ghost types could have such extreme telekinetic powers so that they could control the atoms either in the walls that they're going through or objects that are thrown at them, or in their own bodies to just make things phase through them. I think it's more likely that they control their own atoms rather than being able to control the atoms of like any other substance, but either or I could see work. And this would require massively more powerful psychic abilities than your typical psychic type Pokemon. Ghost types appear to have evolved these special traits of invisibility and intangibility as opposed to traditional psychic types, which have overall higher stats. I think it's all sort of stitched together with a couple of type matchups. The first being that Psychic is weak to Ghost. After all, one of the few things that can beat psychic powers or magic is stronger magic. The other type matchup being that they're both weak to the Dark type, which in Japan is called the Evil type. If Ghost types truly were these things coming back from the dead to haunt people and feed off, their fear and all these, basically just mess with people, why would they be weak to evil? If anything, you'd think that they would be immune or at least resist the evil type. So what gives? I think this is an extreme case of what I would call the Gramble effect. If you aren't familiar with Gramble's lore, essentially it looks big and mean so that it scares off foes that it probably couldn't actually beat. And I think ghost types may have adapted the same strategy. They appear creepy and spooky and have all these powers to sort of back up the creepiness factor, when in reality they aren't strong fighters and would probably lose if they didn't scare off their opponent. The ghost type as a whole is pretty weak. It has the fourth lowest base stat total average of all the types. The only types that are lower are normal, bug, and poison, which are all generally seen as pretty bad types. And with such weak stats in the wild, ghost type Pokemon would need to rely on these scare tactics to avoid being knocked out by any foe they come across. So, to sort of wrap things up, ghosts may or may not be real in the world of Pokemon, although they certainly aren't in our world, but ghost type Pokemon have a very reasonable in-world explanation for their spookiness. They're just exceptionally powerful psychics who use scare tactics and their spooky powers to scare off foes that they would lose to. Nothing to be afraid of at all. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you haven't already, feel free to check out our Patreon, the link to which will be down in the description. And since I'm recording this a few days before even the Patreon announcement goes live, if you have become a patron between that video and this video, Thank you so much. Your support for this channel and all the work that I put into it means so much to me, and I look forward to growing this channel with you. That's all I've got for you today. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at Pallet_U to keep up on all things Pokemon science, and as always, there's a time and place for everything.